hurry, which made her driving even more careless than usual. Her boyfriend Simon had already criticized her many times for failing to stop completely at stop signs. "That's what they call a California or rolling stop," he told her. "If the cops catch you sliding through a stop sign like that," he said, wagging a finger at her, "they'll give you a ticket for running a stop sign. That's a moving violation. That means at least a $100 ticket plus 8 hours of driving school for another $30. I know, she replied, "but I never do it when they're around, so how can they catch me?" Simon was about to tell her that cops have a habit of suddenly appearing out of nowhere, but Colleen told him to stop thinking so negatively. "You are bad luck," she said. "When you talk like that, you make bad things happen." He told her that life doesn't work that way. Colleen was in a hurry because she needed to drop off a package at the post office. It had to get to New York by Wednesday. She exited the freeway and pulled up at the stop sign. One car was in front of her. Colleen looked to the right and to the left. No cars were coming. It was safe to pull out. She hit the gas pedal. Bang! The car in front of her was still sitting there. The driver was a young woman who got out of her car, walked back to look at the damage to her new car, and started yelling at Colleen. "What were you waiting for?" Colleen demanded. Tina was going back to school for her third master's degree. She was a special education teacher, but she couldn't take her job anymore, so she had quit. The kids were out of control. There were too many of them in one classroom for her to manage effectively. The school administration ignored her pleas to add teacher assistants. They ignored her complaints that some of the kids were simply little monsters. They were discipline problems that other teachers had shunted off to special education. The administration didn't even respond to her complaint that one oversized young student had pushed her down one day onto the floor. Tina wanted to call the police, but the school principal talked her out of it with promises to improve things. 2 weeks later, not one promise had been fulfilled. Tina angrily visited the principal, who told her that if she didn't have the patience to wait for things to improve, maybe she wasn't cut out to be a teacher. "How dare you? The issue is not whether I am cut out to be a teacher," she angrily replied. "I am a teacher, and a darn good one. But no teacher can get along forever with inadequate supplies, with overcrowded classrooms, with students who are dumped into her class, and with students who attack her. And especially," she growled, "with idiots like you in charge who continually ignore the needs of special education students and teachers." Abigail and Jeremy got divorced about 10 years ago. Abigail did not want to see a lawyer, worried that it might turn ugly, so she talked to Jeremy, who agreed that it was a good idea to not use lawyers. He said not to worry, he would take care of her. She said she wasn't looking for a free ride, she could take care of herself. But, Jeremy insisted, he would help her out, then or whenever she needed money. It was the least he could do for her, since she was not taking 50% of his income and property. So Jeremy gave her $10,000 before they got divorced, because Abigail said that would be all she would need to finish getting her master's degree and start teaching. And that was it. For the next 10 years after getting her degree, Abigail worked as a teacher. She liked her job and the people she worked with. Unfortunately, a tornado wiped out the entire school and half the town. Many teachers got laid off. Abigail spent a month visiting family and friends, but then had to find a new job. She decided to change careers. To do so, she needed to go back to school for 2 years. Her tuition and living expenses would cost her $25,000. She called Jeremy. She and Jeremy had remained friendly over the years. "Jeremy, I need a big favor," she said over the phone. "Sure, Abby, you name it," Jeremy replied agreeably. Jeremy had a great job and a good life. She told him that she had been laid off and she needed $25,000 for a degree and a new career. The friendliness left Jeremy's voice. She reminded him of his promise 10 years ago to help her out whenever she needed it. "Yeah, Abby, but that was 10 years ago. That's history now, right? Have you tried your local bank?" The biggest news in the whole world occurred 2 weeks ago when Paris Hilton was sentenced to 23 days in a Los Angeles jail. The heiress to the Hilton hotel fortune, who was a favorite of the paparazzi, had been cited for driving on a suspended license, among other things. When the judge decided that she must go to jail, people everywhere voiced their approval or disapproval. The news was on the radio, TV, and the internet. Why her situation was such worldwide news mystified almost everyone. After all, her only known value to society thus far had been her ability to party with one boyfriend after another, 1 week after another. As many said, she was famous for being famous, nothing more. When she finally went to jail, there must have been 100 photographers taking pictures of her. At first, the jail officials put her in a private cell, but her claustrophobia caused her to have panic attacks. They released her the next day. The following day, however, the judge ordered her back to jail to finish her sentence. The sheriff said she was treated like all the other prisoners. She ate bologna sandwiches and other nutritious food, just like the others. When she finally was released from jail at 12:01 a.m. on a Tuesday night, dozens of photographers again congregated around her to snap the perfect photo. She spent the first day relaxing and recovering at home in her parents' mansion. Then she went on the Larry King radio show and talked about her experience. She hadn't liked being in jail, she said, but it had turned her life around. She had found God, and now she was going to do all she could to help needy people improve their lives. Starting in February 2009, broadcasts of all TV signals will be digital, replacing current analog signals. For people who have cable or satellite TV, this is a non-issue because their reception will not be affected. But people who use rabbit ears or outside antennas won't be able to receive the new digital signals. They'll have to buy a converter for each TV, which will cost about $50 each. For Chris, that was too much. Instead, Chris was simply going to give his 2 TVs away to a thrift shop. Then he would wait until the prices went way down on digital tuner TVs and buy one when the price was right. He loaded the TVs into his car. The lady at the thrift shop wasn't interested at first. She changed her mind when he said that they were only 13-inch TVs and that they worked perfectly. He was relieved when she accepted them. Had she not, he would have had to deposit them at a hazardous waste facility, which meant waiting in line in his car for hours on end. Chris got home feeling good. Now he was going to enjoy at least a year of no TV. The idiot box was a good name for that waste of electricity. He felt like a new man for having got rid of his 2 TVs. When Donna called that night, he proudly told her the news. Donna, whose native language was Chinese, was not happy. "What do you mean you have no TV?" she yelled over the phone. "How are you going to teach me anything when I called to ask you about new vocabulary on the 11 o'clock news?" She had a few more things to say. Chris sighed. When she finished, he promised her he would buy a new digital TV the very next day. "Let's go to Walmart," Elizabeth told Kenneth. She wanted to buy some paint supplies. He suggested that they go to Home Depot instead because employees there could tell them exactly what to buy. After arriving there, Elizabeth found a friendly-looking worker who was momentarily free. "Excuse me," she said. "Could you help us?" She explained that she wanted to paint her office. "Neither me nor my husband knows how to do it, so please tell us the basics," she added. He smiled and told her that it was simple. All they needed were 2 gallons of white glossy paint, a roller, a tray and an insert to pour the paint in, and an extension handle to reach the high parts of each wall. "Don't we need primer?" Kenneth asked. "Oh yes, of course, I was getting to that. If you don't put primer on first, the paint won't stick to the walls. Here are 2 gallons of good but inexpensive primer, and a brush would be a good idea for use in the corners and edges, and that should take care of it. Just put the primer on first, let it dry for a couple of hours, then put on 1 coat of paint, let it dry. Then, if you want to, put on another coat, but it shouldn't be necessary." As they were putting the items into the trunk, Kenneth told her they should buy a ladder too. "We're going to have to use the brush to paint up near the ceiling. The roller won't do in a corner," Kenneth said. "We don't need a step ladder. I can sit on your shoulders," Elizabeth laughed. They went back inside and bought a step ladder. Cynthia and George went shopping together at Walmart. "I need a water dispenser for my office," Cynthia told George. "What do you mean by water dispenser?" George asked. "You know, one of those things that they put the big 5-gallon jug upside down into. Then you can pour yourself cold water using the blue handle or hot water using the red handle," Cynthia said. George tried to tell her that she had too few clients coming to her office to need such a dispenser. He told her to buy a case of bottled water. She could keep the bottles cold in the office refrigerator. Plus, she had a stove and a coffee maker in her office, so she could use either of them to produce hot water for her clients or herself. A contract with a water company is going to cost you at least $30 a month, he argued. And maybe you won't even be consuming that much water a month. Why don't you wait a few months and see how many clients you get, and then decide if a water dispenser is absolutely necessary. If it is, buy it then. There's no rush to buy it now. In addition, he argued, the trunk of her car was too small for the dispenser to fit into, nor would it fit into her back seat. So, end of argument, he concluded. They left Walmart. Cynthia dropped George off at his place and then drove back to Walmart. The dispenser was in a box that was almost the size of Cynthia, but she carted it out to the parking lot and managed somehow to get it into her trunk. That night, when George called, he asked, "You didn't go back to Walmart and buy that thing, did you?" "Of course not," she told him. Jim and Alicia had 2 dogs, Bugs and Bunny. They were both 15 years old. Bunny was dying. Bugs was still healthy. They were brother and sister and had been together since birth. They had never been separated for longer than a couple of hours. Jim and Alicia weren't sure what to do. The vet had told them that Bunny was in pain and might continue to suffer for as long as another year. This was unacceptable to both Jim and Alicia. So putting Bunny to sleep now, instead of letting her suffer, was not an issue. However, what to do about Bugs? The vet said Bugs was still healthy. He could last another 2 to 3 years. But how long, they wondered, would he last without his sister? Bunny had always been Bugs' big sister. She was confident and assertive. Bugs was rather timid. He didn't mind when his sister bossed him around. She was also there for him when he was feeling anxious. Bugs followed Bunny everywhere, and whenever Bunny decided to sleep, Bugs always curled up next to her, whether he was sleepy or not. Jim and Alicia both arrived at the same conclusion without very much discussion. When they took Bunny to the vet so that she could be put to sleep, Bugs went too. The Buick wouldn't start. Considering it was 15 years old, this shouldn't have been a surprise. But the battery wasn't that old. It was a die-hard, sold by Sears. Gerard had bought it 6 years ago, but it was a 100-month battery. It was fully guaranteed for the first 12 months, and then prorated after that. Gerard called Sears. The service rep told him he would probably get $10 to $40 credit toward a new battery. Gerard wondered how there could be such a $30 range, but he didn't bother to ask. If the problem was electrical, he asked the service rep, what would Sears fix? The rep said Sears only replaced alternators and starters. If the electrical problem involved something else, Gerard would have to take it to the dealer. Gerard went out to pull the battery out of his car so he could recharge it overnight. Then he could hook the battery up the next day and use a meter to see if the electrical system was working properly. He opened the hood. He looked some more. Where was the battery? Had someone stolen it? He opened the manual. The manual said nothing about the location of the battery. He called up his friend Brian. Brian told him that he was looking in the wrong place. The battery was under the rear seat. Gerard scoffed. Nobody puts a battery under the rear seat, except Volkswagen, he told Brian. Well, it's got to be somewhere if it's not under the hood, Brian replied. Gerard went back out to the Buick and lifted up the rear seat. He found a few coins, some real old chewing gum, a paperback novel, and a watch battery, but no car battery. Enough was enough. Gerard called AAA's emergency road service. Before the tow truck driver towed the Buick to Sears, Gerard asked him if he knew where the battery was. "Oh, sure," he said. "It's under the hood, but you'd never know it because it's completely hidden by the big white plastic windshield washer reservoir."